Hey, what's up? Welcome to Cohn and Krueger, a special evening edition of Cohn and Krueger. That's Larry Krueger. I'm Grant Cohn. How you doing, Larry?
Back from a week at the beach, feeling good, feeling recharged. Can't wait to get to camp. A little calm before the storm. How about yourself? Looking good,
It's about a
feeling
week
good?
away, right? It's about a
Yeah,
week away.
yeah. Fired
This
up,
this
man.
6 week period between mini camp and training camp is a very strange time in my life every year. I always feel like I'm always someone else. It's like I don't know who I am. I'm always grounded in my job. I almost feel married to my job sometimes, but not for these 6 weeks. I'm just like adrift on the,
Seriously.
you know. But
Yeah.
we're back. We're back.
We're not going to have to create anything.
Nah,
We just have
it's
to
over.
report. We go
No,
from
the way I think of it
creating
is
to
like
reporting.
you're on a raft, okay? Mini camp ends and you're on a raft, and the Niners just kind of push you into the sea, and you're like, "We got 6 weeks. Let's see
Right.
if I'm alive. Let's see if I'm alive." But we're here. We're about a week away from touching uh, some grass. It's going to be exciting. Going to be a lot to watch. Let's talk about it. There's
Let's do it.
news. Alex Smith recently was doing an interview with NBC Sports Bay Area, and he spoke about Brock Purdy, Trey Lance. Why don't you tell the good people who watch our show, the millions and millions around the world, what he said?
Well, I mean, I loved what he said because I agreed with every bit of it for both quarterbacks. I mean, if we start with Trey, he said, "Hey, I still love Trey's future. I think he's an incredible talent. He's a great kid." And he just kind of talked about how he's got to block out, the negativity or, the naysayers, the people that question him, and just focus at the task at hand. And between Alex's comments on Trey and then Jeff Christensen's comments, kind of almost promising that, hey, you're going to see a different Trey Lance when camp starts. To me, that kind of vaults Trey into the number one guy that I want to be watching when camp starts. Just simply, well, there's been an awful lot of talk about improvement, awful lot of talk about reps and what it's done, and now it's time to see it. So but I agree with Alex. I've definitely really believed that Trey, despite the fact that it hasn't happened yet, that it's still going to happen. So that's one. And then on Purdy, he kind of just said, "Hey, you know what? All these other things outside of he basically crystallized the quarterback position into three elements: your accuracy, does the ball come out on time, and do you process what you see at the line of scrimmage?" And he thinks that Brock does that exceptionally well, and so he's got a lot of enthusiasm about not only what Brock has done, but he used the word sustainable, and that's what I think. That is, I think, where I would differ from some people. There's a lot of people that were impressed, but just are like, you know what, this ain't sustainable. But I think what Alex kind of wrote there or talked about with Mayoko is that, you know what, you can talk about 40 times and this and that and all kinds of different measuring things, but really just comes down to, do you process what you're seeing? Are you on time and accurate? And kind of on time and accurate are almost kind of the same thing, but not quite. But I agree with that. So I think that Alex, who I think Grant would be a phenomenal 49er quarterback coach, he probably made too much money to ever need to coach. But if he ever wanted to be a coach, man, I think he'd be an outstanding one. I think you got a glimpse of him. Said if he was talking directly to Brock, it's like, dude, you got it, just keep it rolling. And he's talking to Trey, you got it, just keep working, keep grinding. And I kind of believe that he's right. I think the Niners have, and you and I and me and Jesse have gone back and forth on the franchise quarterback. And, you guys both are in the mode of, you know, franchise quarterbacks are super rare. And if you had to go one way or another, you'd go that neither of these guys is franchise quarterbacks. I personally disagree. I think we're seeing two franchise quarterbacks, and we're picking the warts on both of them. But in reality, I think when it's all said and done, you're gonna have two guys that you can win games with. So I mean, I thought Alex's comments to Mayoko were really insightful.
Yeah, I appreciate how positive Alex Smith is because I feel like it was a while ago. I mean, I was in high school when they drafted Alex Smith, but he was just buried under an avalanche of negativity from people who didn't really know what they were talking about. I mean, I didn't like Alex Smith when I was in high school and college. I talked
He
a lot about
wasn't good.
he wasn't, but at the same time, he was a victim of circumstances. And I think it's important to remember that just because Jimmy Garoppolo had a hot start, it didn't lead to a Hall of Fame career. And just because Alex Smith had a rough start, it didn't mean that he was a bust. He ended up being, he's been to more Pro Bowls than Jimmy Garoppolo's been to. So it's nice to see the one quarterback in Niners history who didn't have that hot start the last 20 years. Kaepernick had it, Jimmy had it, Alex didn't. For him to come out and be like, you know what, can we give Trey a break? He was 20 when they drafted him. He didn't
Right.
have experience. I mean, like, he's enthusiastic about Brock too. I appreciate that. I'm enthusiastic about Brock. I like that someone finally has Trey's back. And of course it's Alex Smith, because Alex Smith was written off at a very young age in quite the same manner. And yes, he was on a worse team, but still it's nice to have someone someone who can legitimately empathize with Trey Lance. Say, can we pump the brakes, please? The dude's 23. I appreciated that.
Totally.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for him to comment. I was trying to get him on my channel just because exactly what you expressed. Not only is he positive, but he's got a layer of credibility because he's lived it all.
He's been through it.
He's been through it all. He's been
Yeah.
the guy with Kansas City at the end who is doing a lot of the things that Brock's doing well. He was accurate. He's processing what he sees. He's on time with his throws. He was Brock late in his career, and he was Trey early in his career.
But Alex has to live with the stigma of being drafted before Aaron Rodgers. Like, that's unique. That's almost like what Mitchell Trubisky has to live through. And he survived it and flourished in spite of that. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Oh, and I'll never forget, because the day he was drafted, we did an interview with Urban Meyer. And I thought Urban Meyer was going to be super, Urban Meyer coached him. I thought he was going to be super glowing. And what Urban Meyer said that day was so eye-opening. He's like, this guy is a really great kid. He's smart. He's this. He's tough. He's football family. Football's important to him. All these traits, incredible traits. And we're like, Urban, so you think he's going to be really good this year? And he's like, no, he's going to be totally non-functional until he knows every aspect of the offense. Non-functional? I couldn't believe he said it. And I'm like, are you serious? He's going to be non-functional? He's like, yeah, it's going to take him a while. You guys are going to have to be patient. He's going to be completely non-functional until he knows, every attribute of this offense. This offense is quite a bit different than the offense that we ran and that he ran at Utah. And it's just going to take some time. But as long as people are patient, they'll be happy. And it's like, sure enough, Alex Smith was a damn good NFL quarterback, but he at that point was, whatever. 9 years in. I think when Harbaugh took over, Alex Smith was going into his 8th year. And that was a huge turn right there. The Harbaugh era is when his career turned.
Yep. So I appreciate Alex Smith. Thank you for your candor. Someone needs to have Trey Lance's back. We all appreciate Brock Purdy. Congrats, Brock Purdy. But it's nice to have someone say something nice about Trey Lance, someone associated with the NFL. Because it feels like every insider's like, I've heard that Trey Lance really sucks. It's like, are you sure? Do you need to say that? Could you give him a chance? Because that's the kind of thing that someone like Alex went through, And you're not defined by who you are at 23 years old. Trey's 23 years old. What were you doing when you were 23, Larry?
Oh, God. 23. Yeah. Getting in fights and doing stupid stuff.
Written off. Imagine being written off in life at 23. Written off. Just doesn't have it.
Anyway. Oh, I know. I mean, the pushback that I've had to give on both fronts, the people who are like, Purdy was lucky, he's coming back to earth and he's going to suck. What? That makes no sense. And then Trey's a bust. He's a bust, and he's never going to amount to anything. He's never going to. He just can't do it. It's like, based on what now? I mean, it's like we just, unfortunate. And I'll tell you, the real disservice is to both these guys, because there's nobody who should be ripping what Brock Purdy did last year, but people are, and the reason they are is because they're feeling force-fed Brock Purdy as the savior, as the guy, and they want to pause and say, hey, you know what? Let's see more. And so they're pushing back on Brock Purdy, but it really
I don't think
comes
anyone's ripping
across.
Brock Purdy. I don't think anyone's ripping Brock Purdy.
Well, no, but I mean, people have pushed back and just said, I guess the word that Alex
fair.
used, that I would say is a consistent theme of the people that don't believe in Brock Purdy, is Alex thinks what he's seen with Brock Purdy is sustainable, where lots of people have suggested that what Brock has done for a myriad of reasons is not sustainable. And that part, I think, is a disservice to him, because it kind of makes it look like, hey, man, beginner's luck. And then people will point to Jimmy, and Jimmy got off to a great start and then kind of petered out. And God knows a lot of people point to Kaepernick. Kaepernick got off to an awesome start and, didn't put in the work or petered out, or they made adjustments to him and he didn't adjust back. But anyway, I just think that these guys have been done a disservice, because in reality, Trey was the rawest quarterback to be drafted maybe in our lifetime. And nobody's really championing that idea. It's like, he's not ready. He's not ready. He's not ready. It's like, okay, you do know that you drafted a very, very raw player. So the fact that he's not ready, it shouldn't be like, oh my God, it's a nightmare. It's like, no, there was a chance of this, and now we're seeing it. The question is, does he get better? Does he continue to get better? We're going to find out this summer, right? And I expect him to be a whole lot better.
Okay, here's my next question for you. A lot of reports coming out this offseason that Trey Lance has improved. We've heard it from Kyle Shanahan. We've heard it from Debo. We've heard it from George Kittle. In each case, they've said he's a lot better. George Kittle said he seems more confident, more joyous on the field. So there's been like varying levels of specificity, but it's coming from people who are fairly close to the matter. On the other hand, they don't have to tell the truth. It's in their interest to pump the kid up. What do you think? How much stock do you put into all this?
That he's better?
Yeah, how much stock do you put into it?
A ton. There's no doubt he's better. There's no doubt in my mind.
I mean, we've seen it, right? You and I have seen it.
I've definitely seen him improve. Yeah. But ultimately, what it really comes down to is just all of the variables, all of the different. I mean, you've checked out Quarterbacks on Netflix, right? You've been watching that at all? Have you seen that?
I haven't watched it yet. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, it's really awesome, Grant. You're gonna love it, and it's basically just a deep dive on the quarterbacks, and you get some glimpses into real life quarterbacking in the NFL, the physical pains, the intricacies, all the different terminology, blah blah blah. The simple task of calling a singular play in the NFL is sometimes 23, 25 words long. So it's just vast. And when you're talking about Kyle Shanahan's offensive playbook, it's more vast than others. So, I mean, even if Trey was super experienced, he would have a learning curve in this offense. Now you take a quarterback who's super raw and you have this vast offense, it's going to take some time. And I think now that you're going to see him get his arms all the way around what he's being asked to do in every phase of the game, from setting the protections to going through his progressions to his mechanics to his throwing, I think you're going to see a guy that is mentally freed up to just get out there and compete. And then ultimately, I think that's what third down is in the NFL. It's the quarterback down, and you compete for that first down. And you got to have total urgency and total focus. I think you're going to see that, and then that's going to help him sustain drives. Sustaining drives is going to help him produce more points. Producing more points is going to help him give Kyle Shanahan more a greater eagerness to put him in there. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. Brock's got the advantage because of 33 points a game. That's his advantage. That's why he's the starter going in. But Trey, 33 points a game also has a lot to do with McCaffrey. It also has a lot to do with Debo and Kittle and Aiyuk, and you know what I'm saying? So, and Trey's got all those advantages as well. So now it's just a matter of getting your arms around it.
I would love to know I'd love to talk to Jeff Christensen privately and ask him, where exactly do you see improvement with Trey? Where exactly did you have the biggest impact with Trey? Because when I watched Trey at OTAs and minicamp, you were there. What I saw was he really has a different on the short throws. the screens, the slants, the short stuff. I feel like it's more of a wrist action than an arm action. Remember when he was a rookie and he was in preseason and he was gunning those slants really hard and the wide receivers were dropping the ball, but people were fairly saying like, that's a very tough ball to catch. It's not a very catchable ball. I think his short throws are much more catchable now. And I think that's a big deal for him. He's never going to be completing more than 60% of his throws if he's gunning those short throws. So if he can just, I feel like his layups are actually a little bit more soft. There's a little bit more English on him. And I've always liked his deep throws. So we'll see how he does in the intermediate ones. But I feel like that, to me, is the Jeff Christensen effect right there.
Yeah, I think the way I would describe it is, there's been many times where I felt like one of the biggest negatives of Trey is that he's kind of one-speeded. He's got one speed, and it's all coming out hot. And in reality, a lot of this offense is within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and it's really your footwork's got to be right, and the ball's got to come out on time, but it's got to come out as a catchable ball. I think he's been a little late because of his mechanics on some of the short stuff, and he compensates by throwing it harder. And that's just not the best way to go about it. You got to be on time, and you got to throw with tempo and pace, and there's got to be, the throws have to make sense. You're throwing a deep out, then rail it in there. But you're throwing a, flat pass to a running back, and you got to layer it over a linebacker. It's not about how hard you throw it. It's you got to take a little off. The game that I watched again a couple weeks ago was the Bear game, and he got criticized so heavily for he dramatically overthrew Tyler Kroft. Tyler Kroft never left the earth. He never jumped an inch.
Thank you.
He didn't jump.
Thank you.
At all.
It was ridiculous. Why was Tyler Kroft on the team last year? What did he ever do?
It was as much on him. That was as much on him as anything. But also the throw, it wasn't that it was so unbelievably high. It was just it was a little too hard, and it wasn't lofted. And so
he needed a little more.
If he had lofted it, now he's got an extra second to jump. But because he didn't loft it, by the time he turned around, it was too late to jump, and the ball was beyond him. So it was on Trey for not lofting the ball, but it looked worse because Kroft never got even 1 inch off the ground. He was on the ground the entire time. If he's got 35-inch vertical or 30-inch vertical, he catches that, and that's average. He probably catches that ball easily, or he definitely gets a hand on it. Instead, it looked like a dramatic overthrow. It wasn't that dramatic of an overthrow. The tight end he just threw the wrong type of pass. He didn't loft it. He didn't put touch on it. He put too much speed on it. He made the receiver decide too quickly, and it was too much of a laser, and he didn't loop it in there. So we're talking about nuances of throwing, and that's where Trey, with not playing a ton, needs development. And I think if you ask Christensen, he'd probably tell you it's the array of different throws that Trey makes at different times. Now he's making the right throws in the right times.
And I feel like when people who really back Brock or Jimmy argue about people who back Trey, and people who say that Trey's skill set transcends Brock or Jimmy, they'll say like, okay, yeah, sure. But like, can Trey hit the easy stuff? Because that's 87% of the offense. And if he can't do that, then who cares about the other throws that he can hit that the other quarterbacks can't? And that's a valid criticism. But I feel like what I saw from him in those offseason practices is a guy who's more equipped to hit the easy stuff. And I think everyone saw it 2 years ago in preseason. He was really throwing the slants too hard. There's a lot of slants in the offense, a lot of quick in-breaking routes. Can't throw them like that. And he needed to make that adjustment. And I think it's interesting that if he did make that adjustment and it sticks, that it was with a quarterback coach that the Niners didn't recommend. I mean, it wasn't their guy. It was a guy that Trey sort of found. I don't know how he found him. That's a good story. I'd love to know how in year 3 after he tried and failed with whoever the Niners recommended. That's a good story too. The Niners always like back into their quarterback successes. It's like, we got Brock Purdy with the last pick in the draft after Tariq Castro Fields. We risked the Dolphins taking him so we could get Tariq Castro Fields, but now we look like geniuses because we got him.
Yeah, let's be honest. Anybody who does any kind of personnel would tell you, you need to be good, but you need to be lucky. And I think they've got two good quarterbacks. One they drafted and are having all kinds of growing pains with because they want him to produce right away, and it hasn't been a direct line. But I kind of wonder if I don't really think the 49ers haven't said anything. It's all based on what they've done, right? Like we think that they're frustrated or impatient with Trey because of the presence of Darnold. But maybe we're reading that right, but maybe we're reading that wrong. Maybe Darnold is simply there because they walked out of the link in Philly that night going, I don't care what the situation is. We're getting multiple options at quarterback, and that's it. And it doesn't matter. It's not about, so maybe we're reading it and people are reading it as, hey, you know what? They wouldn't have brought in Darnold if they really love Trey. Well, maybe it's not about Trey. Maybe it's about they just want to make sure they don't get caught in a Josh Johnson situation where it's a big game and they don't have a backup who they think they can win with. I viewed it as I'll say this, Grant. I thought that when they went after Darnold so early, that it was a definite statement of their lack of belief in Trey. But as time goes on, I'm kind of wondering if I got that wrong.
I feel like going into that signing, we all knew that quarterback was a huge need for the 49ers. And we were talking about which one were they going to sign. We were talking Mariota. They picked a guy. They signed him on the first day of free agency. Yeah, I'm sure they like him, but we all knew they were going to do this. It happened, and then people acted like they were surprised and it meant something. I think it was actually predictable.
And maybe it wasn't them picking him as much as he picked them.
Yeah.
That's
Perhaps.
possible. I will say this. I got the NFL Plus this offseason, and so I've been going through the all 22 on Sam Darnold in Carolina, and I was totally underwhelmed when I watched all 22 from Sam Darnold at Carolina. He had some good moments, but he also has these just hugely negative plays, and we're talking about a guy who was a 2018 draft choice. So I don't know what we're going to see from Sam Darnold, and I'm kind of, my question would be, is the plan to have Trey compete with Darnold and the loser is done with the Niners are done with the loser? Because the way it's set up is they keep telling us that Brock's going to be the one. They signed Brandon Allen to an absolute perfect third quarterback salary. He's going to make $1,080,000, which is, I went and looked at every third string quarterback in the league. They're all making basically exactly that. So is Brandon Allen going to be the third guy and Brock's going to be the first guy, and it's Darnold and Trey competing for number two? And what happens to the loser of that competition, which I think is going to be Darnold? Does that mean Darnold's going to Green Bay, like was rumored, 10 days ago or so, that you have to cut down? It seems unlikely because they're talking about him in such glowing terms and they seem like they love him so much. But if you made me predict how the quarterback room is going to go, I'll say Purdy gets the start and is ready week one. Trey beats out Darnold for number two, and Darnold gets dealt, and Brandon Allen is the number three.
Yeah, I can see it. Vincent Campos says, Grant, you rip on Brock regularly, weak arm, small ceiling. I rip on him. I'm just not necessarily sold that he's a franchise quarterback like Larry says, but I do think he's good, and I agree with Alex that his level of play is sustainable. Mike Drops Monster says, Brock, 8 games UCL surgery, Trey, 4 games, Darnold, minimal time in offense. All 3 quarterbacks are more likely to have growing pains. Brock's ace in the hole is his contract. Those 8 games aren't even in the NFL. Yeah, like Brock's playing like on the NFL version of minimum wage. You got to love that about you can't be mad at Brock.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't even exist on the freaking payroll. He's not even there. It's like if you were on the team, Larry. Anything he does is gravy, and it's a lot of gravy.
You got to remember this, too. I saw this stat when I was doing my pre-camp breakdown on the Niners, which only consists of like buying like 4 different magazines and seeing exactly what's in them. But one of the stats that I saw, which I thought was really interesting, outside of 2019, Grant, the Niners have gone 6 straight years using at least 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So the odds are,
disgusting. That's
If you like one of these
disgusting.
quarterbacks, odds are you're going to get a chance to see him.
What a shameful pattern. Mike drops with Monza again, says, let's all at least be honest about Kyle fumbling Trey's development. Darnold wasn't an injury hedge until they seen Trey's development. Now he is. Yeah, it seemed like they brought in Sam not really expecting Trey to make a stride. And I think what they were saying was, look, we have to, allow for the possibility that Trey could make an improvement the way Justin uh, Jalen Hurts did.
Jalen.
But we can't make this happen. And so Trey just goes and finds some quarterback coach that the Niners didn't recommend, and it happens. And the Niners are like, oh, great, wonderful, thank you very much. Hey Sam, remember those things we told you when we signed you? Forget it. You suck. Sorry.
Well, there's no doubt Darnold was a hedge. Darnold was a hedge.
Yeah.
The question is, was he a hedge on Brock's elbow? Was he a hedge on Trey's ankle? Was he a hedge on the league adjusting to Brock? Was he a hedge on Trey's development? I don't know, but he was a hedge.
Yeah. Okay. Let's look at it hold on. All right. How about this? Would it benefit Brock Purdy to start the season on the bench? Best case scenario, 0 setbacks. He gets like 3 weeks to prepare for week 1. Last year, he had all of the offseason plus a lot of the season to be the scout team quarterback. He got inserted week 13 when the team was rolling, and he was ready to go, and it all worked out. He was almost like the closer. Would it benefit him to be called out of the bullpen again, or do you think nothing bad could happen? Well, what do you think? Could it benefit him?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how he's feeling, to be honest. I don't know if he's got fatigue, if he's got pain, if there's stiffness, swelling, soreness. I don't know how that elbow's feeling. Assuming full health, it wouldn't benefit him to sit, because if he sits, in my opinion, Trey will play, and then Trey, I think, is going to play well. And then you've got a full bore, if Trey plays as well as I think Trey can play this year, I think, and you gave him a month, I think he could play so well that it was just a ongoing all season long, can't put the genie back in the bottle quarterback debate between the fans, the players, the media, and everybody. That's what I expect Trey to be able to play well this year. There's no reason he shouldn't be able to play well. He knows the offense. He looked really, really, to me, Grant, I was trying to describe this to somebody, a buddy of mine who's a scout was like, Krug, let's talk a little bit about what you saw at the minicamp. And I'm like, well, you know what? I think Trey reminded me in this minicamp of Brock in last year's minicamp. And he's like, okay, go with that. That's good. And we start talking about it. He's like, how so? And I'm like, well, last year I just felt like Brock mastered every drill, and it just looked right. Trey had brief moments of awesome, and then brief moments of inaccuracy and indecision. Windows, plays where he's holding the ball throughout the window and he's got to get rid of it. He's questioning himself. He looked like an under-repped quarterback, which is what he was. Yeah. Brock looked very much on time and very much like he's done every drill they were doing. He had done it before and was mastering it. Well, that's what I saw this summer, or this spring, I guess, from Trey. He knew every drill that was coming and he was mastering those drills. So that's what I saw. And I think that's gonna bleed over into training camp, and you're gonna see him in the preseason produce successful drives that produce points.
I'm curious to see if Brock Purdy plays in the preseason. I'm curious to see if he plays in the training camp. I just feel like for him, it wouldn't hurt to start the season on the bench. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. He has no offseason to get better. He's rehabbing. So I think it would benefit him. I mean, not just the fact that he's had no offseason, but the fact that the Niners' offensive line is really there more to run block than to pass block. The fact that the Niners can't keep a quarterback healthy for more than 2 months. I think if I were on the Niners, I'd want to be the dude that's the last dude coming out of the bullpen, not the dude starting the game. I know I'm getting that hook in the third inning, man. I'm not lasting past the third inning.
No, I hear you. I also I do think there's something to, hey, you know what? You're probably not going to go the full year without having some kind of an injury, and this minimizes your exposure. I would say though that do you think Brock benefited from sitting last year? Because let's look at it for what it was. What it was he played in the preseason. He played well in the preseason. That was in September. Then he did not play the rest of September or October or November. Didn't get in there until 10 days or so into the month of December. This guy sat for 3 months. For 3 months, he didn't get any reps with the first team at all. Did that benefit him? Some people would argue that it did benefit him, but no reps at all. And if he's not the starter to begin this year, is he getting reps with the first team? Maybe, but probably not. So I don't know. I mean, I definitely think that he's a more apt to be able to get through the season healthy if you gave him a month off. But I think I would say that about any quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle this one. They started out like 3-3, like 3 years in a row. It's possible the Niners feel like, who cares about September? We know where we're going to be when November starts. It's all about November and on. And as long as we have Brock, then we're good. That might be one way to look at it. Like, who gives a damn? I mean, unless you're trying to like
get the number one seed.
But you're not going to get it. You're not.
Well, you might. I mean, they went undefeated in the division last year, and I don't know about you, but to me, the division looks like crap. I mean, I don't think the Rams are going to do anything. Arizona doesn't look like anything. Seattle
looks better.
Seattle's 26th in the NFL against the run last year, and they didn't add anybody in their front, right?
Yeah, Bobby Wagner, Draymond Jones.
Okay. Yeah, actually, Draymond Jones should help a little bit.
They're going to be better.
Okay, I mean Seattle. Seattle.
Yeah. The Rams and the Cardinals.
The Rams and the Cardinals.
Awful.
Yeah,
not even worth talking about. They have so many starters in their team. You're like, who the fuck is that? Sorry, for cursing. All right,
look at the Cardinals. The Cardinals didn't have to get rid of D-Hop because of cap reasons. No. They got rid of D-Hop because our quarterback's out for the year. Why pay $30 million to a receiver when we ain't going to win jack? That's basically what they said.
It is the fuck it. Sorry, I'm gonna stop cursing. Is Brandon Aiyuk a top 10 wide receiver? Yeah, I bring this up because Madden doesn't think he is. Madden put out their rankings. Here are the top 10 wide receivers. Justin Jefferson in order. Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, DeAndre Hopkins, Terry McLaurin, AJ Brown, Amari Cooper. Top 10. No Aiyuk. Would you put him in that list? Or would you bump anyone for Aiyuk?
I like Aiyuk a lot, and I think there's a chance that he could have a phenomenal bust out year, but there's no way he's top 10. I mean, it's just too many receivers in the league. I mean, if I mean, there's all kinds of guys in that list that you didn't name. I like Aiyuk a lot, and I think he's primed for a huge year. But like, I'd rather have Jefferson, Tyreek, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs. Those 5 for sure. So then to me, it's a matter of the next 5, which would be CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf. He could be in that group, but then there's also other guys. I mean, there's T. Higgins, there's Jalen Waddle.
T. Higgins is good.
I think Garrett Wilson is a superstar in the making. Yeah. I think he's going to be awesome this year.
Yeah.
There's Keenan Allen. There's Olave. I mean, there's Debo. But I would say he's just outside the top 10. I'd put him in that 10 to 15 range.
Yeah. I would put him in the top 10. I would take him over Amari Cooper. I like Amari Cooper, but Amari Cooper to me won't go over the middle. There's nothing tough about Amari Cooper. Brandon Aiyuk is tough as hell. Yeah. AJ Brown, yeah. Terry McLaurin, yeah. DeAndre Hopkins, I'll take Aiyuk at this point. I think Hopkins is slow at this point. Chase, great. Kupp, great. Diggs, I think Brandon Aiyuk is a whole lot like Stephon Diggs. And I think he's going to prove it this year. They have Diggs as number 4. I think I would rather have Brandon Aiyuk today than Stephon Diggs, who is 29 and going to be 30 in November. I'm taking Aiyuk. I think Aiyuk's going to end the year. If Aiyuk were on a team with a quarterback who had a big arm, Nothing against Brandon Ayuk, but a big arm who could really hit him in the intermediate and deep areas. He got 150 targets this season. I think
Well, I
he'd
think
get the
that's really
recognition.
that's the bigger
Yeah,
part. It's the
yeah.
targets.
That's
I mean,
hard.
this offense has Kittle and Debo and McCaffrey
McCaffrey.
and backs and
Yeah,
just all kinds of
yeah,
things. They run it a ton.
yeah.
But I mean, there's also a bunch of young receivers in the NFL that in any one given year could step up. And like this year, for example, I'm looking at the list. A couple guys that I think could really step up. First of all, Calvin Ridley back from the gambling. I think Ridley's a special player. Traylon Burks in Tennessee, especially with D-Hop on the other side. I think Burks goes off this year. I think Jerry Jeudy has a bust-out year this year. I think Christian Watson, if it wasn't Jordan Love, I'd feel better about Watson, but I love Watson's talent. There's a number of guys. I mean, do you definitely have Aiyuk in front of Debo?
To me, I think Ayuk's a better wide receiver than Debo. I feel like Debo's game has regressed a little bit. If you told me Debo was 215 pounds, I'd be interested. But to me, at like 220, 225, he's not getting open. He's never been really good with his hand-eye coordination. He's all after the catch. So I feel like his route tree has become like a route bush. It's a route shrub. Like, what does he run? How does he win? He doesn't, essentially. They get him open. He catches short passes, and then he dominates. That's great. But Aiyuk gets open like very few people in the league can. And he does drop more passes than you'd like, but he has those very long arms that Debo doesn't have. And then after the catch, he can't compete with Debo, but he's also pretty good. I'll take Aiyuk. What makes Debo cool to me is what he can do as a running back. I love Debo, the running back. He's averaging 6 yards a carry no matter what. But as a wide receiver, I don't know.
Debo's kind of like Roger Craig.
Yes. High knees.
And Aiyuk reminds me a lot of JT.
Well,
he reminds me a lot of JT.
I say Torrey Holt, but yeah.
He's way stronger than Torrey Holt, though. Like,
yes, he is.
Beat the tar out of Torrey Holt.
But if Kurt Warner throwing him the ball, he could win in the same areas of the field, is all I'm saying.
I think I'll tell you the most exciting. You said, give me the most exciting part about this year. Well, it's Hargrave for me. But then if I go to number two, a quick second is what Debo and Aiyuk told us in the last media session. Like, Debo's like, I sucked. I just watched film and I was terrible, and I'm never going to put film out like that again. It's like, what? And then Aiyuk was like, who was very good last year, caught 78 balls, 1,000 yards, whatever it was, 1,100 yards, was like, I'm just getting ready to take off. And you could see the conviction in his face. It's like he believes it. So the Niners have two, I'll say top 20 wide receivers that are coming into this year like hell-bent to be a whole lot better. And they may go to the Super Bowl just on that right there. Hargrave on defense and those two receivers. If Debo and Aiyuk can get to another level, a higher level than they've been at thus far, and you add Hargrave on defense, this is gonna be an exciting year. Should be.
Yep. All right. Let's I got a wild card bonus question for you.
Okay.
Give me one player who's going to get benched midseason, in your opinion. One player who is not going to be a starter by week 18.
Tayshaun Gibson.
Yeah.
Tayshaun Gibson.
Yeah.
Why? Because Tayshaun Gibson was signed for a very particular reason. Steve Wilkes wants to play cover 3, and he's got the box safety in Hufanga, and he's got to have the deep middle coverage, and that's what Tayshaun gives you. And in a secondary that lost some real alphas, this guy's a leader. He's a leader. He'll get everybody lined up correctly. He'll play the deep middle. But as the season goes on, I think you're going to see that Jair Brown is a much better player. And I think by midseason, he will have taken that job away from Tayshaun Gibson.
I think that's a good answer. The other one I'm going to go with is Deommodore Lenoir. I like Deommodore Lenoir. I feel like Deommodore Lenoir has created the best version of himself. So respect to Deommodore. I respect what you've done. But I feel like he's working from a deficit. He's a shorter corner. he does have good speed, but at the crisis moment, he could be right in phase with a wide receiver. When the ball's in the air, I don't think he plays it very well at the catch point. He did have some interceptions in the playoffs, but if the wide receiver's like 6'1" and the pass is placed properly, I don't think there's much that Lenore can do. And I think there's a reason that they drafted Darrell Luter Jr. I don't think he's going to hold on to that job. I think he's going to get mossed a few times, and they're going to try someone else. That's my prediction with Lenore.
Well, it's not a bad call because there are guys that they could go to. Like Womack, I thought looked as good as any player on the field on defense.
As long as you're going to go with short corners on the outside, why not Womack? Yeah.
Womack's got unbelievable ability. And don't sleep on Deshaun Jameson. And so they're both out there. They got the one thing the Niners have quite a bit better at this year than last year is they got good depth on the corner. If I was going with another one, though, I would have gone with Jake Brendel, because I just think that you got John Feliciano there, and Feliciano is he's a proven player in this league. He's 325. He's not 295. He's tough. He's strong. He can keep the rush out of the quarterback's face. It's obviously imperative. And I know Brendel was a Pro Bowl alternate, and I know he's probably a favorite of Forster, and he's a smart guy. He's competitive. He's really good, I think. I think he's a really underrated player. But I think Feliciano is just a bigger, stronger guy who can anchor against, the Chris Joneses and the Fletcher Coxes and the guys who were just behemoth inside. And I think Feliciano is a starter. He's always been a starter. If the fact that he's even here and is not starting kind of makes you go, that's weird. And so is he going to start over Banks? No. Is he going to start over Burford? Probably not. But he may start over Brendel. If Brendel even has any issue at all this year, I could see Feliciano in there. Huge addition.
Let's take some more of these super chats. Wave 9 says Kyle letting the media say BP when he's going with Trey Lance. I don't think Kyle, to Kyle's credit, I don't think he's made up his mind. I think he's understanding the lay of the land. Like, yeah, Brock's great, and he's not cleared yet. So let's deal in reality. Who's available? Sam Darnold, who sees ghosts, and Trey Lance, who seems to be improving. And there's Brock, who's coming back. I think, I don't know. He doesn't have to have an evil plan. He could just be open-minded. Twisted Clown says over-under Kyle getting 1.5 quarterback. Over. Thank you very much. Twisted Clown.
History says he's going to go over.
Kind of. Mike Drops with Monza says it benefits to sit if you're Brock. Even if Trey plays the whole season, Brock's streak is intact. Brock even regresses slightly. His money's going to hurt. Have to be playing with second contract priority. Yeah, I feel like Brock has shown so much. He has so much good film that he could slow play it. He could say, some team's going to want me. My film is great. I don't need to rush back for anyone. But
the whole Niner mode this year is get the 1 seed. I mean, the one thing that I think I was talking to either Barrows or Mayoko. One of these guys was making the point, and I think it's appropriate, is that the Niners are always about the bowl. I mean, they're always about the six Lombardi. Jed talks about it a lot. But this year I get the feeling that it's just like they feel like it's their time. They will not be satisfied with a trip to the conference title game. They've been there in 3 of the last 4 years. They want to go to Vegas. They want to get that trophy. They want to. I mean, I think ultimately John, Kyle, Jed, they're all somewhat made men if they can get that elusive 6th Super Bowl, and they know it. I think they're all about it.
Yeah. Okay, last second. Hold on. Strawberry reacts says, if Brock is cut, does he clear waivers? No. Last second sports says, what's up, Jesse? Someone who trains Mahomes and Dak came out and said Christensen really changed Trey in a big way. Check your text, Grant. Dang, LOL. What's up, Larry? No, I got it. I watched it. I watched the video. It was great. We were talking. I saw it too. That's I don't need someone to tell me what it looks like. I've seen it. He does look a lot different to me. I think that the way he throws, slants, screens, all the short stuff is way different. I think it's a huge development for Trey. That's the way I see it.
I think the most underrated aspect of that whole thing, Grant, is the time that Trey got to spend with Mahomes. Because Mahomes, if you watch this quarterback thing on Netflix, it's what makes Mahomes special is just like his will. He has a will to win that's like a Jordan, that's like a Brady, that's like a Jeter. It's like, he has a great will to win. There was one segment that you got to check out in the game last year against Kansas City where Gibson broke. I think it was Gibson who broke on a comebacker, and he broke really hard on it. And Mahomes noticed and was like, "Hey, if they're gonna roll downhill that fast and they're gonna come up that aggressively on the underneath stuff, that means they're leaning forward, and that means they're susceptible to the deep ball." And then he burned him deep a couple times. And I just his mindset, his aggressive, taking every slight on a football field personally, being totally in the moment mentally. I just think that is going to be something that Trey probably got out of that experience with Christensen. And by the way, the other thing that I also noticed is the guy that Trey was throwing to the other day at TCU, Tay Martin. Watch the hell out for Tay Martin. If I'm Juwan Jennings, I'm showing up in camp with a purpose this year because Tay Martin could come for Juwan Jennings' job.
Yep. Brother Bob says Nails saw that on your YouTube. Larry still trading Kevin. Kevin?
My son?
Larry, say it. Lance will break out. Purdy traded. Yeah, he's going to be traded. Traded. Joseph Stockbridge says, who do you guys think should have a higher Madden rating, Debo or Aiyuk? Aiyuk. I'm team Aiyuk.
Yeah, I think Aiyuk is got more. First of all, he was more productive last year. So for those who are like, well, Debo was better last year, no, Aiyuk was better last year. And I think Aiyuk's got another level to get to, and I think he's got a better body to have longevity in the NFL than Debo. So I'd lean with Aiyuk.
I feel like Aiyuk is in midseason form all the time, and Debo hasn't been in midseason form in a while. Sorry, Debo. Mike Drops with Monza says, I think Debo is a better route runner than people think. If you watch him, he runs lazy routes. Debo is more of a weapon. Aiyuk is far superior.
Did you just see what that guy just wrote? He says, I think Debo.
Yeah, I think he miswrote it. Jennings, Lenore, non-starters come week 18. Jennings. Yeah, he drops a lot of passes for a possession receiver. Kless says, you guys saved me from nothing to listen to tonight at work. Thank you. Can't wait for camp. Hope Trey can fully compete. I mean, yeah, he's healthy enough. Ronnie Bell, big time contributor by the end of the year. That'll be interesting. Maybe Ronnie Bell takes Jennings' spot. Could be.
There's a Ronnie Bell thing that I didn't realize in the draft, and I didn't realize it after the draft. I only caught it like right before the last day of minicamp. Ronnie Bell's dad is not just a football coach. Ronnie Bell's dad coaches wide receivers at a college, and I forget the college, like Northern Illinois or something like that. I forget exactly where. Maybe it's Western, but his dad is a collegiate wide receiver coach. And when you watch Ronnie Bell, it's like he looks like the son of a wide receiver coach. He does everything right for the most part. He's good. I mean, he's not particularly big. He's not particularly fast. There's nothing about his skill set that says he's good until you see him on the field. Then you realize this guy's good. So I can't wait to see. That's going to be a battle royale, man, because I don't think they're going to keep more than 5 receivers. Debo, Aiyuk. I think Danny Gray is going to make it because of the vertical speed, and Ray. So what does that mean? That means that, in my mind, Ronnie Bell, Juwan Jennings, and Tay Martin, and maybe Willie Snead, but Willie's more veteran depth. Those 3 guys, Tay Martin, Ronnie Bell, and Juwan Jennings, that's a battle, man. And one guy's probably going to get that job, and the other 2 guys are not. So that to me, that's going to be absolutely fun to watch this summer.
Monza says, I hear the 1 seed and agree. However, which quarterback will play this year with 0 growing pains? What scenario has the least amount of growing pains? Good point. I think everything involves growing pains. And I think that's like the number one built-in excuse for the Niners this year if they don't win the Super Bowl. Well, the quarterback room was young. It was. It is. That's what you wanted, though. That's what you bragged about at the owners' meetings and how versatile and cheap it was. Anyway, we got to end
They
this show
wanted the
pretty
cheap. They
soon.
wanted the cheap room. I mean, come on.
They want
Their
this.
team is built, on having the cheap quarterback room. That's why you have Javon Hargrave.
All right. This was interesting. You listen to this Play Callers podcast. It's clear that the Niners could have had Vic Fangio, but didn't necessarily make the concessions they would need to make, considering he runs a 3-4. They run a wide 9-4-3. So he ended up in Miami with Mike McDaniel, and he's just like gloating about it. Like, you needed to be a little flexible to work with Vic, and of course I am, but other people aren't. Were the Niners sort of right to sort of stick with, I think from their perspective, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What they got going with Chris Kasarik is working, and, don't overhaul it. On the other hand, it's Vic Fangio. What do you think?
Yeah, I saw you and Jesse debating this, and I saw, McDaniel basically talking about, referencing Kyle as an egomaniac for not being willing to switch off. I think in a perfect world, Kyle would love to never walk in the defensive meeting room ever. That he would just be an offensive coach, and that he would have a Wade Phillips type coordinator or Vic Fangio, some old trusted hand that he could just say, "You got the defense, big boy," and never worry about it at all. But I think when it came down to this decision, I think the Niners made the right decision. Why? Because it's not about scheme as far as would you be willing to switch to a 3-4 from a 4-3. It's more than that. It's about how you built your football team. Nick Bosa is not a 3-4 defensive end at all. He would have to be a 3-4 outside backer. Technically, most teams that use the 3-4 will drop the outside backer into coverage at times.
Doesn't Joey play? Joey plays in a 3-4.
Yeah, he plays in a 3-4. But I mean, Nick doesn't drop. I mean, he doesn't drop. So I personally think that just fitting their personnel, like what's Kevin Givens? He's a one gap penetrator, get up the field guy. What's Kalia Davis? He's a one gap penetrator, get up the field guy. Several of their players. What you'd have to change out like 6 defensive linemen. What's T.Y. McGill? He's a one gap penetrator, get up the field guy. So, and I think they really like Chris, and they think he's a big part of their culture, and they didn't want to switch their front. And Wilkes was sitting there willing to take the front as is, go with the wide 9. It gave them some continuity, but I think it had more to do with, like, Christian Wilkins. Give you an example. He is the Dolphins' best defensive lineman. Christian Wilkins' advantage is that he is scheme versatile. He's really best in a 3-4, a 34 front at the defensive end spot. You can play him as a 4-3 tackle, but he's not ideally suited in there. He's more of a head on a head, stripe on a stripe, 3-4, 2 gaps, command both gaps. That's what he does. So that's their best lineman. I think the Niners defensive linemen, for the most part, the guys they've gone with up to this point, are 4-3 guys. And if you switch to a 3-4, you'd have to rework good portion of your room. So I think I'd rather have Fangio because of Fangio's track record, but to me, the idea of switching to a 3-4 was a non-starter.
I think it should have been a starter. I'll take Fangio. I don't give a damn what he wants to do. The way, like, his version of the 3-4 to me is very one gappy. There's one player that's 2 gapping. It's the 5 technique. It could be Armstead. Everyone else is 1 gapping. Bosa would go from, having a hand in the dirt to standing up. He's not going to drop. He'd be Alden Smith. Alden Smith didn't drop. You'd have Javon Hargrave. He'd be Justin Smith. You'd have whoever you want as the nose tackle. It could be Kinlaw. You could have Armstead as the 5 technique, and you could have whoever as the Paris Harrelson on the other side. I think it could have worked. And it just seems like there's no good reason to not bringing Vic Fangio. I don't know. But I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, Vic Fangio has how many Super Bowl rings? None.
Who's a better defensive coordinator than Vic Fangio? Steve Wilkes?
No, but I think Steve Wilkes was a better fit here. I mean, it's just a matter
That's
of
fair.
this. If you
They
felt
didn't
like,
want to change it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I get it. I
well,
get it.
it's just a matter of like how your D line is just strength of your football team. You feel like you got a pretty good D line. The Niners, I believe, led the NFL in quarterback hits last year. They didn't obviously lead on sacks, but they got a bunch of hits in the quarterback. Also, you're going from the ultimate get up the field, one gap, penetrate, put heat on the quarterback, very simplistic scheme to a 3-4 front, which is oftentimes kind of a, read and react type scheme. And I just think that that's problematic in year one. Now, it could work, but it's going to take some time. And I just don't think that they felt like they had the time to put into it, especially in the offseason where you don't get a lot of time with these guys. They would have had to rework, I think, probably at least 2/3 of their defensive line and go for different guys. I just think I think all things being equal, that's why they went with Wilkes. And also maybe they felt like Wilkes that their secondary needed a little bit of infusion of talent and of coordination. And I'll say this, there's no doubt they've added some good players on the back end, and the guys that they do have back there are seemingly really hell-bent on being improved. So Steve has sold them on the idea that they weren't that great last year. So I hear what you're saying though. Fangio is a proven defensive coach. He's got incredible. He probably, money being equal, preferred to be here.
And it's like we're talking 3-4-4-3. That's like 25% of the snaps. The other 75% is nickel, and it's just whatever.
It's more about personnel. I don't think it's about scheme. It's about personnel.
You give Fangio this personnel, I think he'd be able to figure it out. But here, look, I got to go to dinner.
Okay,
I got one more bonus topic, and I think we should talk about why Dak Prescott is the most overrated quarterback in the NFL. I don't know what it is about Dak Prescott, but I woke up today and I decided, you know what? Dak pisses me off, and I need to talk about it because I feel like he gets all this credit for being, first of all, he broke his leg. That was terrible. And he came back. So he was the comeback player of the year. But also, he's a cowboy. You know what I mean? He's a cowboy. Kind of like Jimmy Garoppolo with the Niners. He gets all this credit for being on this team. If he were on the Minnesota Vikings, if he were on the Arizona Cardinals, if he were on the Washington Commanders, no one would give a fuck about Dak Prescott. But he's on the Cowboys, and everyone makes a big deal, and then he faces the Niners in the playoffs, and that man shits the bed in ways we have not seen. I mean, I know the Niners have a really good defense, but no quarterback has played as poorly against that defense in the playoffs as Dak. I mean, Dak finds new ways to shit the bed against the Niners defense. You could argue the only reason the Niners made the NFC Championship the last few years is because Dak just shit all over himself. And repeatedly. He faced the Niners first one time at home, faced them the next year, and played even fucking worse. How do you do that, Dak? I think it's fair to say that this guy is a total media creation because he's on Dallas. And he's a nice guy, and he's got a nice smile, and he came back from adversity, yada, yada, yada. He sucks.
I mean, he's one of these guys that he was a great story until he wasn't. He was a great story when he was a 4th-round pick that became their franchise quarterback. But then he got paid, and then he leaves you wanting more. I just think that the Niners, you can blame Dak, but I think that the Cowboys are just a bad matchup for the Niners, and it's hilarious too because the
terrible
Cowboys,
coaches over there.
I just think one, I'm not a big Mike McCarthy fan. I think he's super overrated. But also the Niners, the 2 years ago in Dallas, they ran it up and down the field on them. I mean, they came out in that first drive and just said, here's Elijah Mitchell in your grill. How you liking that? So I just think it's a bad matchup for Dallas, but I love how Dallas also falls in love with guys in the draft. Like they fell in love with Mozzie Smith from Michigan, and Mozzie is the ultimate looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. I mean, I watched him. He did not do that much at Michigan, but he's a freak. He's huge and he's strong and he's fast and he's this and he's that. And in reality, he doesn't make plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage. And, it's like they're probably going to wind up cutting Neville Gallimore to create a roster spot. I'd rather be there to get Neville Gallimore off their hands as they go with Mozzie Smith. I think it's going to be a huge whiff.
let's come back to Dak. Hold on. I'm not done with Dak. Dak, I'm not done with you. I feel like he was a good quarterback before he broke his leg. But since he's come back from that broken leg, I feel like he's a little skittish.
The ball's
I
coming
hate
out.
to say that. I hate to say that about a professional athlete. Like, I'm not a professional athlete. I'm not tough. He's tough. But, like, you're a little skittish, bud. And when there's bodies around him and he can't really step into his throws, he throws those awful interceptions like the one to Diamador Lenore. I mean, like, he led the league in interception percentage last year. He was awful. He was a freaking disaster last year. And I think he's a lot like Jimmy. Jimmy was good until he tore his ACL, and then I thought he was skittish after that. He didn't really want to get touched. I don't think Dak wants to get touched. I think they're both in survival mode. And I think the best thing that's ever happened to the Niners is that they've gotten to face Dak 2 years in a row in the playoffs. His quarterback rating has been below 70 both times. Geno was in the 90s. Stafford was in the 90s. Rodgers was in the 90s. I mean, yeah, it's a really good defense, but dude, what is your problem? Dakota. That is your name. Until you can post a 71 quarterback rating against the Niners, we're calling you Dakota. North Dakota, East Dakota, one of them. Not the good one.
He reminds me of Derek. He reminds me of Derek Carr.
Thank you. In a bad way.
He reminds me of Derek Carr in that.
Yeah.
You know, they've and you know what? These guys are all more of a man than me. I mean, seriously, to play quarterback in the NFL, you got 300-pounders who are fast and they're rolling by you like cars on the freeway.
If someone broke my leg like they broke Dak's, I wouldn't. Yeah. Well, I never played football to begin with, but I wouldn't come back. Fuck that. I'm done.
You know, Dakota, I think Dak is one of those guys that he's just at this point, he's thinking about him. He's thinking about long-term longevity. Yeah.
How do you
preservation? Right. Yeah. And they're getting rid of and Derek Carr's a little bit like that too. I feel like Derek Carr, you know, I think Raider fans are going to love Jimmy. People think, oh, they're not going to love Jimmy as much as Derek Carr. They're going to love Jimmy more because
he's a little tougher than Derek.
Jimmy's going to stand in. Jimmy's going to stand in and take a hit. He's going to let those receivers work their way open.
Monza says Kyle's the OC and DC. He's way too controlling. I think that's a little bit with the Fangio thing. He has his idea of what the defense should look like, a rough outline, and that's also what McDaniel said is that Kyle's insecure about having a coach in the building who knows more than him. That was damning. Dustin Dagg says Fangio had a top 3 run defense of all time on SF. It's true. 2011. You think Purdy may be skittish in the pocket now? I don't know. It's something to look for though. It happens to quarterbacks. It happened to Brock. We shall see. It happened to Jimmy, but I don't know. I'm not saying it's going to happen to Brock.
I mean, you don't know. You don't know what it's going to look like.
You don't know. You don't know. We got to see. It's dinner time for me. Is it dinner time for you? Have you eaten dinner? Are you going?
We've already had dinner tonight. Had a little. What do we go? We went with grilled brats tonight. We went with the bratwurst. A couple bratwursts on you.
You gotta like a brat.
Yeah,
you gotta like a brat. All right, Larry. Thanks for doing a late show with me today. Good stuff, everyone. I'll be back when you least expect.